Divas. That's right. We are having fun. Me here in the Senate media room. They were nice enough to let us use it to record this week's episode. It's really nice. And I'm here with my old pal, Jeff Schweers. Jeff or Jeffrey. He's Jeff now to all of us. He is the Capitol Bureau reporter for the Orlando Sentinel and one of my OGs. We talk about Hope, Florida. We talk about the end of the legislative session. We talk about so much. You'll want to join us this week. That is Jeff Schweers, the Orlando Sentinel, for another reporter roundtable. Stick with us. You won't want to miss it.
These people are either not working or they are not making enough money because we have a tourist economy that doesn't pay people high enough wages. I mean, that's a reality.
You're listening to Deeper Dive with Dara Cam, a podcast by the News Service of Florida. Let's dive in.
Divas, oh my goody gosh. I am here with a new G to you all. He is not a new G to me. He is somebody I've known for quite a while. Jeffrey Schweers with the Capitol Bureau reporter for the Orlando Sentinel. Tell me, Jeff, did I totally bungle that?
No, not totally. It's pretty good. And my friends and family call me Jeff. So
Jeff.
You can call me Jeff.
Thank you so much for that.
We've been friends since like forever.
We have. We go in the Wayback Machine.
Oh, yeah.
It's true. We are here in the Capitol, and just moments ago, as we record this, we are recording this on a Thursday. You all know that this comes out on Sunday, Divas. The Senate president just made an announcement, right? You were on your way into the Capitol to do this with me when the Senate president said, go home and have a good weekend, y'all. And
Go home, and I'm going to take him up on that. Of course, I am home here in Tallahassee, but yeah, it was. This is just a really clear example of how things happen during the last throes of a legislative session, especially when they haven't even gotten around to their one real main purpose during such a session, which is to pass a balanced budget.
It is the one thing that the legislature is required to do, right? To pass a budget. And that is really the only thing that they are required to do under the Florida Constitution, pass the budget. The Senate president and the House Speaker, our sophisticated divas know they are about, how many $1 billion apart on a tax cut?
What's a few billion?
Between friends.
Between $3 and $5 billion, I think.
Between friends.
Between friends.
Right.
And they are friends. They say they are friends, and they are a really good team working together, but they are really far apart on the tax package. The big problems or the big blocks is the Perez, the speaker, Daniel Perez from Miami, wants a $5 billion sales tax cut. And I believe the last time I checked, the Senate was counter-offering with a sort of graduated sales tax cut of $1 billion this year, and then $500 million the next, and $500 the year after that. Like a nice, slow, graduated sales tax cut.
Right. The Senate president is concerned about the long-term state of the Florida economy, and I think that's where he's coming from.
I mean, and that's a kind of a good thing to be concerned about, but it also, on the other hand, I think, Perez has a valid point too, that, the people of Florida need tax relief. And here's one way that the legislature can provide massive tax relief to most Floridians, because as everybody knows, the sales tax is a regressive tax that hurts, the poorer and the working class more than it does the wealthy. So, or even the comfortably well off. So that's what he, saying why he wanted to do that. But I think it was also kind of his counter pitch to the governor's want to cut property taxes or do away with them, which is something he can't do by himself. The legislature can't do it. It's up to the voters to decide to repeal property taxes or lower them or whatever, because it's part of the Constitution. And it's also part of the job of cities and counties to raise or lower property taxes and spend the revenue. And, you know,
Well, I mean, I
and-
don't
and
think
the bulk of
it's
their-
important to not forget that the money, and we've talked about this before on the program, those funds are used to pay for government services like, police, fire,
Police budget.
schools,
Right.
things like that. So,
local services
Yeah.
that everybody depends on. And, I think the consensus, or what I'm hearing, is that the cities and counties, of course, they don't want this thing to go forward. It's not that popular from what I'm hearing, that the idea of, cutting property taxes. So I
the
think
governor, he
he's
likes
sort of
to
carved
say
out a
that
little.
because he wants it to be for Florida residents.
Right.
He says it's good to cut property taxes for people with a homeowner's exemption. He wants it to be for homeowners, not across the board property taxes. So it wouldn't be for commercial properties. It would be for people who have a homestead exemption. And he keeps talking about, tourists and people who have 5, I think he said it today, people who have 5 houses and, all around the country. Wealthy people, I think you
Right.
could interpret that to mean, if you've got 5 houses all around the country,
Correct.
that you don't get the tax break.
And he's right. I mean, people and business owners who, own massive, like companies that own massive stretches of property, like, well, God, there's so many, and although a lot of those businesses have gotten tax exemptions or deferrals to move to whatever town they move to or whatever county. And that's a whole other issue that deals with
Right.
Enterprise zones and so on and so forth. But for the concern of our listeners and our readers at the Orlando Sentinel and the average general person who lives in Florida and maybe owns a home, is there a way, to lower their property taxes at the state level? And I mean, the governor has even suggested giving every homeowner a $1,000 tax rebate using the tourist development tax money.
Right.
Which I mean, or like if you're living in
Which
Orlando,
comes from bed taxes and
hotel room taxes and other, things like that. So if you live in Orlando, which has like $360 million a year in tourist development tax revenue, that might work. But I don't know if that's going to work like in Okaloosa County, which is 80% government-owned land, and there is a poor, they don't have the development. I mean, property taxes and the increase in property taxes that cities and counties depend on comes from development, over year development. It's not coming from homeowners, because the homeowners' assessments are capped at 3% a year.
That's right.
So they're already homeowners, and I'm a homeowner, so I'm speaking for myself here. I'm already getting a pretty good tax break in the fact that my assessed home value doesn't go up more than 3% a year.
Yeah.
So my taxes are very reasonable. And the one thing that I know, like cities and counties can do is, we have a thing called a rollback rate. And cities and counties are
Okay,
supposed
Jeff he is getting into
By the way,
tax stuff. And this was just a
in my
last
past-
minute thing. So
But
I
this is
had
huge.
no idea
This
we
is
were
actually-
going to be
I'm sorry.
diving. No, I appreciate it. That's what we do here. We
I'll
dive.
try and wrap it up quick. We are diving. It's called
We are
diving with the
diving.
divas.
That's right.
We are definitely high diving.
We are diving into
municipal taxes
Go
with
ahead.
the divas here.
And I didn't mean to interrupt
have
you, but
covered.
go ahead.
I have covered city and county governments. I mean, for the first maybe half of my career, with occasional forays into the legislative process as it affects school districts and city and county governments and firefighters budgets and sheriff's budgets and so forth. So I'll just say real quickly that every year, as any homeowner knows, they get a tax notice like, this is your rollback rate. It's an exercise that the city and county governments do to see how much your taxes would be based on the new assessed value. If how much your taxes would be lower if they kept everything the same. If they kept the budget the same and they have all this new money, they would be able to lower your taxes every year. But a lot of times, especially here in Tallahassee, they don't roll back the tax rate. They keep it the same or they raise it a little bit. So every year, residents have a chance to tell their cities to roll back the tax rate. And I mean, that's something that I don't want to sound like an advocate, but that is literally something that every citizen can go to their city council and county commission and advocate for it.
Why don't they roll back the tax rate if they can?
You can't see what I'm doing, but I'm rubbing my
his
finger and thumb together saying, it's money.
It's all about the Benjamins.
It's all about the Benjamins. It's a lot of cities and counties, because they depend so heavily on the property taxes, struggle to attract new development, which is really the only way that they can increase their budget year over year, by getting the more new development you get, the higher your assessments can be, the more tax revenue you're going to get to keep up with the cost of inflation, for one thing. And then you've got things like sometimes cities and counties are required to raise the amount they're paying for their employees' insurance. Firefighter, police insurance, it's expensive. So when they come in with a higher budget because, they want to give their cops and deputies raises, it's really, to me, as you and I were talking about earlier today, it's just a really complicated knot to unravel property taxes. And sales taxes are a straight shot. That whole explanation was just to say one thing: lowering sales taxes is relatively easy, and there's probably more political will to do that statewide. And lowering or doing away with property taxes is really difficult.
When you say there's more political will to lower the sales tax statewide, with the exception of the big dog, one of the big, we have two big dogs in Florida. One is President Trump and one is Governor DeSantis. And Governor DeSantis has already made it very clear that he is not an advocate of doing anything with the sales tax because, it helps Canadians.
Yeah, but that's a misnomer, because I'm going on my memory. I read this 2 weeks ago when I read somewhere that the vast majority of sales tax is paid for by Florida residents.
Yes, that's true.
Over 80%.
Right.
So the Canadians, they pay un peu, as the French Canadians would say, un peu les taxes. Right?
I grew up in Hollywood. And Hollywood Beach would be,
the land of French Canadians.
Different if the French Canadians did not adopt it as their home away from home.
That's true. For one thing, there would be fewer people walking around in Speedos.
Are they still doing that?
Well, that's the German tourists, isn't it?
No, that was the Canadians back in my day. Oh, my
they still. So, yes, indeed. I know the Germans are really big on Hollywood Beach, too.
Yeah. Well, the Russians a little bit south, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Senator Pizzo's.
That's true.
Anyway, so we are here to tell you, as you will be no doubt have bemoaned your way out of it, listeners, by Sunday. It'll be just part of the norm for you to know that we are going to be here a little bit longer than expected. I think if they can wrap up the budget by a week from Friday, so by next Friday, May 2nd, the scheduled end of the legislative session, I believe they could just do a simple extension of this session rather than having to go away and come back. Right now, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say I'm guessing that they go away and come back, that they don't just do like a 1 or 2 day extension. But we'll see. My opinion might change by tomorrow afternoon.
Another, a big news today, what we said, the Senate President Albritton said where he's sending people home tomorrow for the weekend.
That's right.
And they're going to come back fresh Monday and attack the special order. So they got a lot of bills,
they have a lot
of policy bills that they're looking to pass out Monday and Tuesday.
That's true.
But, what's not happening yet, and believe me, this is Thursday and you're hearing us on Sunday. By tonight, things could change.
That's right.
But they're so far apart, I think that's unlikely. They are nowhere close on the allocations. I don't think the Senate president
would have said, we don't have the allocations yet,
right.
Go home. If this was going to change significantly between the time we're recording this Thursday afternoon and tomorrow. But yes, things have been changing at a very rapid pace here in the Capitol. And that's a good segue into our next section, which is the Hope Florida, the House's probe into Hope Florida. And this is something that you've been writing about a lot. We had Lawrence Maurer and Alexandra Glorioso on last weekend to discuss their investigation into Hope Florida and the foundation, and we'll go over a little bit of that again.
Okay.
But what happened today as we record this is just hours earlier today, Representative Alex Andrade, who is the chairman of the House Healthcare Budget Subcommittee, said, okay, no mas. We're pulling the plug on this, at least for now. I've done as much as I can do. And whether he ends up in court in a defamation suit is another tale for another day.
Well,
but why don't you fill us all in on what happened this morning?
Yeah, what happened this morning is that Representative Andrade called the two people that run the nonprofits that receive these air quote grants from the Hope Florida Foundation.
Mark Wilson is
the Chamber of Commerce. Okay. Mark Wilson. And the other person was Amy Ronshausen, who is the CEO of the Drug Free America Foundation based in Tampa, and also has this political arm called Save Our Society from Drugs. SOS.
I've been calling it Save Our Souls. And I don't mean to disparage, efforts to, I'm going to make it clear that as somebody who is a continuing recovering person, that I support recovery efforts. And let's give to everybody who is doing their best to overcome that.
I second that emotion.
Okay, so that is not, this is not a,
but I think it's
an indictment of that.
Fair enough, but I think it is worth noting that the Drug Free America Foundation was founded by Mel Ponder, and I think there was some criticism.
Mel Sembler.
No, but Sembler. I'm sorry. Who's Mel Ponder?
Ponder was another.
Somebody else. You're right.
Yeah, no, Mel Sembler.
My apologies to Mel Ponder, wherever you are. But Mel Sembler, correct me if they had launched these deprogramming programs. There's a little bit of a dicey history back there, but they're totally, this whole other person's running it. It really is focused on drug rehab and, the reason that she's involved in this is
we're not talking about that anyway. We're talking about the politics
where the money went.
And they have contributed significantly to in previous years, they've contributed to the effort to defeat the medical marijuana amendment.
Oh, the medical, right. So this is consistent with their politics.
Right.
Their philosophy.
They did. The Semblers did oppose that, I believe.
So these two organizations, within days of the Hope Florida Foundation getting this $10 million amount, grant.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. The foundation got the money, got $10 million as part of the settlement from Centene,
which was the state's largest Medicaid managed care provider.
That's right.
Right.
Okay.
So that was, according to the lawyers who originally drafted the original settlement agreement, was all for, Medicaid overbilling, allegedly on their part. They claim no fault, but that's what it is for. And was for.
They made these settlements all around the state, all around the nation.
The country, 22 states, none of which diverted a portion of those settlements to a nonprofit, and all of which gave all the settlement money to the state agency that was responsible for running Medicaid in their state. So they got these two $5 million grants from the Hope Florida Foundation shortly after they got this $10 million. And then the foundations turned around and gave nearly the equivalent amount of those grants to a nonprofit political committee run by James Uthmeyer, who was the former chief of staff for DeSantis and now is attorney general. And the Andrade.
Are you writing all that down?
Yeah. And Andrade, you can record this and play it back later. So Andrade says he sees a conspiracy that Uthmeier engineered this whole thing to get, to tell these people to
A what?
encourage these people to get these grants and then give that money to his organization to fight the Amendment 3 proposal to legalize marijuana in Florida. So I'm not calling it a conspiracy, but Andrade calls it a conspiracy to commit fraud repeatedly, numerous times. And he really, believes the evidence is there, especially after his conversations with Mark Wilson and Amy Ronchausen. And, he has text messages that confirm some of the transactions were helped along by Jeff Aaron, who is the hired attorney for the foundation. And he is also the Orlando Airport's attorney. And he started a law firm with May and Downs, who is the longtime city attorney for Orlando. So these are very politically connected people. And I mean, there's nothing untoward about that. This is kind of the way things work in Florida. It's almost like when you reach a certain level, you're only dealing with the same 200 people anyway.
It's true. I mean, and I think Andrade did use the word today, Rep Andrade, when we were talking to him, that they were it's like Tallahassee camp or
Camp Tallahassee.
Camp Tallahassee.
So that's where they
didn't show up.
Well, they didn't show up.
It was very kind of dramatic,
and also
because you've got the committee all there on the dais, and you've got these empty seats with their names there.
Right.
And
all their name tags. All the committee members are there and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at 8 a.m, ready for, the next session of grilling.
Right.
And,
we've had some pretty dramatic grilling sessions over the past couple of weeks.
Interesting sessions for sure.
Right.
With Joshua
Hey,
the head of the chairman of the foundation, and also the chairman of Indelible, a company that has made millions off of the state for emergency management stuff.
Taylor
and there are all these other Taylor Hatch, the secretary
of the Department of Children and Families,
right,
and
Siobhan Harris, the secretary for ACA,
that got the
what is it?
that runs Medicaid, and she's the previous secretary
for
of DCF. So it's a
there's a bit of a musical chairs, for sure, a tangled web. You've got Uthmeier, who was the chief of staff and is now the appointed attorney general, appointed by the governor, to this, which means he is like, and so here's an interesting thing that I don't know if anybody's really contemplated this, but what could the legislature have, and let me just say, so it just kind of seems like they ran out of steam today. They had
it went out with a fizzle. It fizzled out. It went out with a whimper instead of a bang.
Yeah. So whichever dead poet we are butchering, our apologies. So and now it's just
high drama
that led to for 3-4 weeks.
And then
my first story on this was April 4th. Now it's
you said you wrote about it in October.
Well, about this particular chapter but I did write about in October, and this I was already sort of curious about that. They kept trotting out these numbers about having served 30,000 people.
Hope Florida. This is
had gotten
Casey DeSantis'
her signature marquee
economic
passion project to
get people off of welfare and economically independent
through the help of religious and
churches
community
and
nonprofits.
Right.
The one story she likes to tell is about some woman was not able to get help, and she called Hope Florida, and before you know it, some church sent her a lasagna. And I'm not making that up.
I thought it was a crib.
She said it today about the lasagna.
Did she use the lasagna?
Yeah. And it's just a lot of people say it's not the idea itself is not, I don't think anybody is arguing that it's a bad idea, but it's something I think that's been tried in Florida many, many times to have a sort of an alternative pathway, or also some kind of network between all the state agencies that provide various social services, from foster care to food stamps. And It sounds like that's part of what they were doing.
To
But
having the agencies, we have been here a long time, Jeff and I.
oh yeah,
And so it is not a novel concept to want to have agencies speak to each other and coordinate about services that can be provided to people in need. I think what's new about this, and if you listen to the governor very carefully in his languaging around the program, is he said it today, and I'm not going to quote him directly, but to paraphrase, once people get in the government system, then bureaucrats keep looking for ways to keep them in the system, and they keep finding more ways of, they're eligible for this, that, and the other. And I think that I don't know that this is necessarily new, but the approach that they are really, they're really moving forward with is not to supplement government assistance with assistance from faith and community entities, but to replace government assistance with assistance from those agencies. I mean, am I wrong?
I think that's.
Do you think I'm wrong?
I think that's I think that's the general idea, but I also think I don't know how that really. How do you get somebody off of welfare or food stamps if they don't have a job where they're making enough money to pay for food? How do you get somebody off of rental assistance if their rent is over 50% of their income?
Right.
Those are the issues that Floridians
I'm
in this
not
boat are dealing with.
judging one way or the other. I'm saying I think that's kind of the goal.
It's a goal. It's a goal, but it's sort of
money as
like
a government on these.
It's a goal that's way up here, and it's not a bad goal, but it's like, all right, how are these underfunded churches and community organizations going to replace rental assistance or food stamps, or you know what I mean? I mean, it's an economic issue. The economic issue is that these people are either not working or they are not making enough money because we have a tourist economy that doesn't pay people high enough wages. I mean, that's a reality. That's what any economist will tell you.
A lot of these funds that the state spends too are matched by federal funds.
Right. And that's a multiplier. I mean, the state contributes $12 million to a summer food stamp program, and they won't get $200 million from the federal government. But Florida has refused to participate in that program.
I think it's important to remember too, or to note that many times people come in and out of, they're not, it's kind of a myth that people get on government assistance and then they are there for the rest of their lives. Like, people come in and out depending on how their income fluctuates, depending on whether they have really sick children.
Right.
I mean,
all it takes is like one member of your family to have a serious illness and hospitalization to go from being, relatively middle class comfort to destitute. A hospital stay can really, especially if you have a serious illness, it costs a lot. If you don't have any insurance, it can wreck you. So you're right. A lot of people, they come to, food stamps or welfare or, because of a crisis or like a hurricane. And then people seek rental assistance after a hurricane and after the FEMA assistance goes away because they're still not, and there are, we have a housing crisis in Florida. There is not enough affordable housing stock for many people. So, it's like, again, here's a program. Here are so many programs that use state and federal dollars to help protect children, provide health insurance for children, feed the children, put a roof over their heads. And you have these nonprofit groups that are well-meaning, but can only do so much. Take the food banks, for example. You have all these food banks whose contracts are being canceled because the federal government right now is canceling these programs.
Right.
The Trump administration, the USDA, they're canceling food programs right and left. That's having a huge impact on Florida. How are people going to get off of welfare in Florida when they're dealing with this? And this goes back to the legislature. And we asked the legislative leaders before the legislature began, are you anticipating or are you prepared to deal with the coming federal cuts? And their answer was, we're just going to wait and see what happens. Mm-hmm. So that's just where we're at.
When you have these private, religious or private entities taking over what were typically government responsibilities, the kind of oversight, right, is missing, because you can't really, you're not able to see, are they spending equitably? Are they, if we're still allowed to say,
do they have strings attached?
Right, exactly.
Like, you need to come to church and then we'll give you a lasagna.
Right, right.
But also, let's unpack that a bit too. What you said was that these entities are taking over what, the federal government, state government traditionally provided. But that's a misnomer. That's not what they're doing.
Right.
They are not taking over. They are not replacing these programs. Their goal is to get people off of assistance entirely. And these nonprofits are not equipped to provide the level of service that the state provides. I'm not saying that they're not equipped to help people. They certainly are equipped to help in their way, in their own, as best as they can. I'm not knocking a single nonprofit out there. I have a lot of admiration for people who volunteer their own time to help others. I mean, that would be great if more people did that. But so there's that. And then you mentioned accountability and oversight. It's just like with, the voucher program. Where's the accountability and oversight,
right?
To these schools that aren't required to report to the state or do an audit or, keep track of how they're spending the money and how they're teaching these kids. Well, that is, I think, what really got the legislative leadership in the House onto Hope, Florida.
Right.
And what got me going back in like August when they kept talking about how they got 30,000 people off of welfare and it saved $108 million. And I'm like, show me the number. Show me, where are those 30,000? Who are those 30,000 people? How many of them were on food stamps? How many of them were on welfare? What outcomes, what did you do to get them all, and where are they today? And me, Lawrence, and Alex, and others at the Miami Herald and Tampa Bay Times, and other newspapers and other media outlets have made public records requests for months and months and months, trying to just find out, where's this number coming from? Who are these people? How are they being helped? We would like to tell their stories.
I think that's been a source of the frustration.
It has been.
From the House members, too, has been quantified. Like, we just want to see the data. How are you quantifying them? It's
like we said to Alex Andrade today, that welcome to our world.
Right.
We have been trying to tell the story, in a responsible way and accountable way, part of our job as watchdogs is to make sure the state is, being fiduciarily responsible to their taxpayers, to us, our readers, So we have not been able to get any kind of data on the amount of money that's actually being spent to support Hope, Florida, because it is being and has been run under the Department of Children and Families. Mm-hmm. It has converted anywhere from 115 to 150 social workers or state career workers just in DCF alone into these things, called Hope Navigators. Well, who are doing a different beat than what they were doing as social workers, right? Or as caseworkers. So, but these people are also in juvenile justice. They're in guardian ad litem program. They're on elder affairs. They're in veterans affairs. They're in 11 state agencies. Well, how much money is that? Those people have salaries. How much tax dollars that the legislature allocated for one thing, i.e. a caseworker in juvenile justice, only to find that money has traveled over into a Hope Navigator for Hope, Florida. And also, where'd those buses come from? Because they
Have
have
you
these
found
really
out?
beautiful painted Hope
Have you
Florida
found
buses.
out? There's
No,
also some
I
really
still have not found that
beautiful,
out.
highly produced videos on the Hope Florida
Who's
website.
getting paid to produce those videos?
I don't know. I'm asking
It's so
you.
many. I don't know. Because guess who won't tell me, And I've asked, point blank, show me the contract for these buses. No, crickets, And so, I mean, we're going to have to try and figure out other ways maybe to get that money, maybe to go to the DMV and ask for like registration data.
Oh, jeez. Good luck with that.
Right.
I don't think so.
Another state agency that's
Right.
like a wall of no,
Right.
can't help you.
And we'll be right back with Jeff Schweers. Divas, it's that time. You know what time it is. It's time for the news in haikus. It's the news in haikus. And this week's haiku, we've got Jeff Schweers, and he is going to deliver it for you.
So the title of this haiku is Hope is That Thing, ... Andrade kills probe. I've seen all I need to see. Convince me I'm wrong.
The news in haikus. Thank you, Jeff. That was the news in haikus. Don't forget, we'd love to hear your haiku. You can slide them into my DMs, or you can send them to podcasts, that's podcasts with an S, at e.newsserviceflorida.com. Wherever you're listening, please don't forget to subscribe and give us a rating if you like what we're doing. And we're back with Jeff Schweers talking all things Hope, Florida, and we're talking about when we're going to get out of town. Was it you who had the story about someone who was a graduate of Hope, Florida?
Oh, I did. Let's get, but so going back again. So I was concerned about where all this money's going. I find out there's this budget memo that people circulated to all the legislators about wanting to take $21 million in federal ARPA funds. That's the American Recovery Program.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Under that Biden started. And
this was pandemic related funds to help the economy, help people get back on their feet. Well, $21 million worth of rent checks came back uncashed. And DCF asked the legislature if they could give it to Hope, Florida, minus a $2 million cut for administration fees. Right.
So 19 million to Hope, Florida. And I started asking them, well, and I was asking like the top deputy chief of staff for, this Hope, Florida program. She was, turns out she was one of the main people overseeing Hope, Florida at DCF before they transferred her to ACA. And that's like, where is this money going? How is it going to be? Who's responsible for spending it? Where's the budget line? And she's like, it's going to be used for the same thing. I mean, well, what?
For rent assistance?
For rent assistance? How? How is Hope, Florida set up to provide rental assistance?
Right.
And that ties into something you told me today about one of the people you interviewed who sought help from Hope, Florida.
Reached out to me, who said she had sought help for from Hope, Florida, and she's homeless and lives in her car with her disabled husband and their 30-year-old daughter, and they were given the number of a food bank.
So not rental assistance.
No.
So that begs the question: what is DCF doing with that money? Then somebody else said today, well, apparently they got an extension for that, getting approved for that $21 million.
An extension for how to disperse those
of it,
funds.
I think. Yeah. I need to double check that.
Okay.
But that's, so that, had me digging deeper into, I started
and that
looking
was
for
last
their tax
fall
fund.
before we heard about this foundation.
It was like right around the same time that this Hope Florida Foundation.
You're right. It would have been around the same time.
And gave the $10 million or received the $10 million from the Centene settlement agreement. Both these things happen around the same time.
September, October.
So all of a sudden, Hope Florida, which barely raised $2 million, the Hope Florida Foundation suddenly has $10 million from the Centene settlement agreement. And I suppose they're getting $20 million from leftover ARPA funds, rent relief funds.
Right. We don't know that yet because
nobody's telling us, answering our questions about it.
Well, also because the foundation is a nonprofit and they're 990s, which they just filed. They filed late, but they filed for the first year. And so they're kind of a year behind. That's how 990s work.
That's how 990s work. That's correct. But you and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that you can ask them to provide a list of, to provide their current finances. Mm-hmm. Who are your donors? What are your expenses? And there is any donations over a certain percentage mm-hmm. of their net or mm-hmm. gross income, mm-hmm. they have to report. And it's 2%. So if they get $1 million worth of donations, anything over or $20,000 or over, I think, would have to be mm-hmm. reported. Okay. And the person and the agency that made the donation and so forth. And they also have to list who they're donating.
Who they give to.
And I was able to get that from the Florida Education Fund, which was originally passing money.
Right.
The Florida Education Foundation of the Department of Education was somehow passing donations through its own foundation to something called the Hope Florida Fund, which is a non-existent entity because it doesn't have there's no paperwork supporting the existence of the Hope Florida Fund, but it's something that was in all their literature. Donate to the Hope Florida Fund, da-da-da-da-da. And people donated about, or at least the DOE passed through about $1.3 million altogether. And I asked them, I only had partial information for the 23 tax year. And I said, well, how many other grants have you given out in the name of Hope Florida in the current year? And she sent me a list and said that is the total sum of money we have, donated for Hope Florida. So I asked for it and I got that information for, through, 24. So we supposed to be able to get that information for the Hope Florida Foundation. I've asked Jeff Aaron for that money.
Okay.
So we will see.
They're working on it, or?
Right. I mean, they got to find it.
Jeff Aaron, by the way, threatened to file a defamation lawsuit against Chairman Andrade.
Yeah, that happened today.
And a bar complaint. And a bar complaint.
Well, and I mean, tit for tat. I think Andrade could do the same thing.
It's getting pretty, it's all part of the governor and the speaker, and I don't know.
Speaking as a journalist who's been observing politics and writing about politics for a long time, mm-hmm. I can tell you it doesn't have to be this way. And I've seen this in the past too, where, you have valid questions of an agency or a nonprofit. And I've written about nonprofits before that have misspent funds mm-hmm. or overpaid their executive.
Commission on Domestic Violence.
Well, I didn't write about that, but that's a really good example. You did. Yeah. So, both of us have experience. We know that the lack of oversight can lead to careless, if not criminal things. And I think with the case of the Hope Florida Foundation, they were incorporated in August of 23 and went a whole year without ratifying their bylaws. They didn't file their 990 on time. They didn't they didn't sign a contract with DCF as they were required to do under state law. They went 14 months without doing any of the things the statute spelled out very clearly for them to do. So when Jeff Aaron came on board in last October, it was kind of like, oh my God, how have you guys been functioning for 14 months? And those aren't his exact words, but he saw, he told me, he looked at this situation and went, okay, my job is to help you get things
He's
straightened
kind
out.
of the fix-it guy.
He did, and he
The
did.
cleanup
I mean,
guy or whatever. The cleaner.
and since they've they have cleaned up. They had to hire another outside counsel to help because it was like all of a sudden it's tax season and everybody's asking for their 990s.
They hired
But
Mo Jazeel.
Mo
That created
Jazeel,
more drama.
he's a huge lawyer with Horvath and Vogel or Horvath
Holtzman Vogel.
These law firm names.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Anyway, he does a lot of contracts. Shout out to Mo. But
He's done a lot of contract work with it. He resigned from the foundation once he got invited to appear at an
I think I'm
no thanks. But we've been writing, so
anyway, so the bottom line is,
so I had been asking for the 990s and donations
and everything.
Then Lawrence and Alex were asking too, and I think what really set things off is at a press conference with the governor down in the cabinet meeting room here in the Capitol. He said, "Okay, anybody have any questions?" And Alex asked. The conference was about Hope, Florida, and the first lady was there. All these sheriffs that had signed up, to help Hope, Florida, and Alex asked, "What about the foundation's 990s? Why haven't they filed their 990s?" And DeSantis, the governor, just went into kind of a rage, saying, "I'm not going to address these gotcha questions. We're not here for that kind of. Yeah, I know you're being spoon-fed stuff from, a politically motivated person."
He has, the governor is accusing the House of being in bed with lefty journalists, I think
propagandists,
lefty journalists and propagandists, and has said that this is, the first lady is a threat to some people because she is considering a possible run for governor. So, I mean, it is a political story. There's no question that it's a political story.
More so than a healthcare story.
It is really.
But there is a healthcare story to this as well, and that is the fact that ACA has embedded Hope, Florida, this program with zero accountability and oversight. And I wrote about it too.
ACA has embedded, I mean, she was talking about it on the program.
Oh, on the program,
last week that Hope, Florida now has to be prioritized by all of the Medicaid managed care providers. It's in their contract. So,
what does that mean? What is Hope, Florida?
I don't know.
Hope, Florida doesn't provide any medical services.
And you'll be telling us how that's going to be panning out.
And if their goal is to do the same thing with Medicaid that they're doing with food stamps and welfare, watch out. We're going to have even more people taken off the Medicaid rolls than already have. Well, perhaps. I don't know how that's going to work out. And Andrade promised that when the legislative committees come back in the fall, that's one of the very first things he's going to be asking about is, these contracts where Hope, Florida has to be prioritized. How is that going to work? And one of the things he keeps bringing up is so for some reason, Hope, Florida is responsible for loneliness services.
I know. And when he is fixated on loneliness services.
Well, when he
is fixated on loneliness services.
He asked the ACA secretary, Siobhan Harris,
he did.
at his first, committee hearing, what is loneliness services and how is Hope, Florida positioned to provide that service? Right. And she's like, well, Hope, Florida doesn't really provide services. It's when we're more of a network connecting people to nonprofits and again, he goes, yeah, but loneliness services. And it was kind of comical, but it was also to the point of
she later in a video called that an ambush. So
I don't know how you knew for days ahead of time that you were being invited to this committee hearing. So how is that an ambush?
I don't know.
I have to look it up in the dictionary again to see.
Let's move on.
Okay.
This is an open invitation to the Attorney General or to Secretary Harris, anybody who wants to join in. Jeff Aaron, anybody, feel free to jump on the show, and we'd love to let them give their side of the our discussion, because we
I think that
only
would
are talking
be
to
great.
people who talk, we're talking about people who are talking
I mean,
about.
let me know. I would love to have an hour with the Attorney General.
So who wouldn't?
Who wouldn't?
All right. But let's see. So what else? And we're getting close to the time to wrap up here. So anything else you're tracking this legislative session?
Not really. I mean, Hope Florida has really consumed most of my bandwidth this session, at least since April 4th.
Right.
And I look back and that's when I wrote my first story on this particular chapter, based on the House analysis of a bill,
right.
which, by the way, coda to this story is
true.
This all was ignited by a bill that was introduced to embed Hope Florida in statute, make it a statutory,
to create the Office of Hope Florida within the executive office
under the governor's office, which he already moved under his office by executive order.
Right.
But this would make it official.
Mm-hmm.
And, which was like kind of weird because that's what I had been asking. Like, what is Hope Florida? Why I don't see a budget line for it. I don't see any
So
statute.
they wrote that bill for you.
I feel, and I don't think that's a bad thing to do. I don't think that's a bad idea. Put it in statute and make it accountable. Not that putting the Hope Florida Foundation in statute led to them following the rules.
That's right, because it was created by statute.
By the legislature, which I asked Andre about that too. Like, well, you guys created the foundation. Couldn't you repeal the statute?
Yeah, I heard you ask that.
And I don't think he kind of, didn't really answer that.
I don't think so.
I don't think that's where they want to go with it. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens next. I think it's going to be.
I don't think.
Oh, and the coda was, and all the heat that was started because of that bill and that bill analysis completely derailed the bill. It's dead. It's dead in the water unless they bring it up.
I would be very surprised.
Al Britton said, the Senate President Al Britton said, given all the questions around this, I think we're just going to have to, put it aside for now.
Yep.
Yeah. So
definitely.
that was, what else have we got on our list?
What I have on my list is lightning round.
Lightning round.
Yeah. Pizza or barbecue?
Pizza.
Coke or Pepsi?
Coke. Actually, Diet Dr. Pepper.
Popcorn or Doritos?
Ooh. Well, Doritos, because popcorn gets stuck in my teeth and I hate those kernels. I really, I have to floss after popcorn.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Gas,
so you're getting a little bit OCD.
Gas or no gas? Fizzy water or flat? Fizzy or flat?
I like flat ice water, but when I'm in Europe, I like avec gaz.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Don't drink the tap water.
Mac or PC?
I have both.
Okay. Okay. Crocs, yay or nay?
Well.
You should have seen the look on his face. That was a nay.
That was a nay,
if I ever heard of one.
Unless you're wearing them in the garden, or ironically. I have seen some people sporting Crocs and they look pretty fly. I think you have to have a certain element of style to really wear Crocs and make it look good. I'll just say that I have seen some people. I have
some leopard print ones and I'm swearing by those.
I think I would have to, give you an okay on that.
All right. Well,
can I ask one? Birkenstocks, yay or nay?
Nay.
Thank you. Nothing against the Birkenstocks wearers out there, but
personally.
Oh, and by the way, my personal preference for footwear are Doc Martens.
I know you're wearing them now. He's always sporting his Docs.
The air soles, man. They're real. They're real.
So, and you wear them well, I might add. So any guesses or insight as to when this whole shebang will be wrapped up or when we'll be coming back or whatever? Now we're making this prediction here on a Thursday today on April 24th.
Right. Well, I think I kind of go with what you said. Al Britton would not have, said what he said, that they're far from agreeing on things and the allocations still aren't lined up, and he wouldn't be sending people home tomorrow for the weekend, for a nice long weekend, if he thought they were going to be able to accomplish anything this weekend, pardon me, which means I get to go see Wilco and Waxahachie Saturday. And so that's really
go see Wilco.
They reduced Gary Fineout, one of our colleagues and dear friend, another longtime friend of mine.
He was on this show.
I've known him since his days at the Florida Flambeau.
Oh my goodness.
That's how far back I go. But I was gone for a while and I came back.
Yes.
Tallahassee is a boomerang play. People try to leave, but they always come back. But I would have to say that as far as the legislature is concerned, Monday and Tuesday are going to be tied up with passing out all the bills, the important policy bills that they haven't passed yet because they were busy passing Gulf of America and getting rid of fluoride and getting, vaccines out of our lettuce and stuff like that. So they are, I think, though, like one of the important bills that seemed like it was on the verge of passing got TP'd, which, do our divas know? Do we need to explain what
our divas know? Our divas know.
So at the last minute, the condo bill got TP'd.
That's coming.
That'll
come back.
Some of the other big ones are like, I'm waiting. When is final passage going to pass?
Hemp's a big one.
Hemp is a big one. The minimum wage has that passed?
It's dead.
It's dead.
I don't know. It may or may not be. They had a TP it yesterday in the Senate.
And then, I've been so absorbed in this whole Florida thing we're not going to talk about anymore
yesterday.
I have not had, it's like, I don't even know. And then, where are we at with the child labor law?
That's going or went.
Went?
Yeah, either went or gone. I mean, no, that's passing.
It's passed, but it's passed both.
That's passing, I think.
Or maybe so Monday and Tuesday is when I think some of these big bills we're going to see finally that haven't died are going to finally get passed. But that only leaves 3 days, and they're actually supposed to have a budget passed.
No, they're going to go home.
They're going to go home.
They're going to go home. They'll come back.
They don't.
That's what I'm saying.
The bottom line is they do not have time to pass a budget next week and allow for a 72-hour cooling off period. Now, they could pass a budget by Friday and go home and come back, but they would have to the leaders would have to agree on an extension. And I mean, to me, that makes the most sense. Get a budget passed by Friday, go home, give it a 72-hour cooling off period, come back the Tuesday after, pass the budget, go home for good.
So
don't call back a special
session. From Jeff's lips to the leader's ears, okay?
Ben, Daniel, if you're out there listening, get it done.
Divas, it has been a pleasure visiting with Jeffrey Schweers, and you give us your title.
You can call me Jeff.
Jeff?
You divas can call me Jeff. I am the Capitol Bureau reporter for the Orlando Sentinel.
It's been a pleasure visiting with
Likewise.
You today. We'll have you back again sometime soon.
Awesome. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, so this is great.
Thanks for listening to Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by the News Service of Florida, hosted by News Service senior writer Dara Cam and produced by me, Mike Exline. Music for the podcast was recorded by Periodic Labs, LLC.